Hello, friends. Thanks for watching, tuning in. I wanted to discuss something that came up in the beginning of the year with my students, introducing science and philosophy, really the beginning of wonder. In ancient Greece, one of the things that caught the attention of the philosophers and what we call the scientists at the time was the fact that things change. Right? So we were talking about change, and the question came up, are you the same person that you were yesterday? And some people say yes, some people say no. And like, well, in a sense, we're the same people that we were yesterday. And then 10 years ago, are you the same person that you were 10 years ago? And more people tend to say no to that, especially people who are young in their teens. They would say, they were only 6, 7, 5 years old at the time. But what about this question? If you are not the same person that you were 10 years ago, then could I have abused you 10 years ago? But then today say to you, well, I didn't abuse you. That was somebody else that I abused 10 years ago. Or let's say that you lost an arm, right? So a 5-year-old or 7-year-old loses an arm. 10 years later, if they are not the same person, do they have a new arm? Right? If they don't have an arm, that would seem to indicate that that's the same person, right? So whether it's physical or mental trauma that occurs, that remains with that would seem to indicate that that is the same person 10 years later. And then how far back does that go? If you go all the way back to like an infant, right? If you have an infant that is abused as an infant, that creates trauma. Right? And so then 20 years later, will that person say, well, that wasn't me that was traumatized. That was somebody else, because I'm not the same person that I was anymore. That doesn't have any effect on me. Maybe they could say that in the sense that like they've healed or something like that, but that is still them, that they who have had to heal from that trauma. Or if as an infant loses an arm or something like that, same thing. That person 10, 20, 30, 40 years later won't have an arm. Why? Because that's the same person that he or she was as an infant. And even before that, in the womb of your mother, that thing that was there in the womb of your mother just before you were born was that you or not. Babies can sustain trauma in the womb. If there's trauma between the parents, mother undergoes trauma, all of that stuff affects the infant inside the womb, that person then carries with them for the rest of their lives. Or imagine if we have a very, very young fetus in the mother's womb and you remove an arm. That, if that was done to you, to that thing inside your mother's womb before you were born, would you have an arm? No. So that seems to indicate that even from that time, that's the same person, speaking essentially, right? The essence of that person, what makes you, has been there since the very beginning, right? All the way back to, or you could even put it this way, more dramatically, you take a fetus just a few weeks old and you kill it, right? So the thing inside your mother's womb that was there before you were born, if you took that thing when it was just a few weeks old and killed it, would you still be here today? Right? The answer clearly is no. And so then that fetus was you. And you have been you since the moment that you were conceived. Because even if you took that thing that was in your mother's womb before you were born, the moment after it was conceived and you destroyed it, you would not be here today. And so when we think about this, when did you become you? The answer seems to be that you became you the very moment that you were conceived. At the very least, even if someone wants to try to argue that that was pre-me, right? That was me in development. Well, we're all at various stages of development. Nevertheless, whatever happened to that fetus, right, would have affected you. You can't do things to that fetus without saying that we've done things to you. Right? So it's an interesting philosophical question to think about. But when we look at the big picture, think about it from a common sense point of view, you became you at the moment that you were conceived. So thanks for watching, and look forward to being with you next time.